Before we begin this podcast, we would like to advise viewers that in our opinion, it is not suitable for children or people of a nervous disposition.
You're listening to
I Don't Do Sci-Fi.
Season 2, Episode 1. It's real old, isn't it?
Hello and welcome to I Don't Do Sci-Fi. I'm Rebecca Ray and with me are Danny Ray.
Hi.
And John Isles.
Hello.
So before we get into discussing our chosen sci-fi, I want to introduce our guest for this episode, Gareth Preston from Very British Futures. How are you, Gareth?
Hello, I'm very well, thank you.
Welcome back as our unofficial Nigel Kneale expert on our Stone Tape episode.
Oh yeah.
It's a real pleasure to be back. You always look after me very well. Yeah, so it's nice to have let me out again.
You're on day release.
You're enjoying your bread and water.
All I deserve.
He's got a very undemanding rider, Gareth.
Why are you got a confused face, Rebecca?
I didn't understand what he's got
a very undemanding rider.
Your
A
rider is your list of
Things that
expectations
you
or
want.
demands. You send the
Right,
advance
yeah.
to an organiser
I
or
have
something.
not heard this term before.
Okay.
What?
It's a music thing. Well, anyway.
So Gareth, how is your podcast, Very British Futures, going?
Pretty well at the moment. I'm just trying to get back into it, having had to concentrate on my theatre career. Well, at Bolton Little Theatre. But I'm getting back into it. I'm currently editing an episode about a TV show not too dissimilar to tonight's subject,
You're not doing
yeah.
this one as well, are you? Oh no, how embarrassing.
which is A for Andromeda.
Ah.
I brought back two old guests, Nigel J. Anderson and Brian M. Clark, who we were talking about Pathfinders in Space.
Yeah,
and
that
now-
was a good episode, that.
Oh, thank you very much.
I listened to it twice.
I bought the DVD. You put some.
I did buy the DVD as well.
Subliminal messages in the podcast, I think.
Oh, brilliant. I hope you enjoyed it. And, you'll have to look quite hard to find DVD copies of A for Andromeda because it took me a while to track it down for the podcasts. They are quite hard to get hold of. I believe I read somewhere that the factory had an accident. And,
It did. It was burned down during the 2011 London riots.
Yeah, because it affected Star Cops
And Dark
DVD
Season.
as well. Oh, yeah.
It's affected a lot of these old cults British TV shows. They're very hard to get hold of now because they just were lost in that fire in the riots.
So that is coming soon.
Oh, we look forward to hearing it.
Very much so.
Well, it's a good thing you're here, Gareth, because we've got some exciting news. There's a reason why Season 2 of I Don't Do Sci-Fi has been delayed. It's because we've been working on another project, haven't we, John?
Yes, we have exciting news for all listener.
And Mrs. Trellis from Wales.
So we've been working on a fanzine, a sci-fi and fantasy fanzine called Stone Circle, issue 10.
Yes, and the reason why it's issue 10 is because Andrew Rowe Crines and I published issues 1 to 9 between 1995 and 2003. And we thought we'd just do one more issue for old time's sake.
Yeah, we've revived it. So there's two big themes running throughout the issue. So we've got the theme of the changing sci-fi TV landscape between 2003 and now, but we've also got this underlying theme of AI and generative AI in particular, just to show what it's capable of. We've also got other AI stuff in there. So we've got an article on Max Headroom written by Gareth Preston.
Yes, it was great for that one to see the light of day.
Yeah.
And I'm a big fan of Max Headroom. I think it's a really
Me too.
interesting show. And it's great to be back in fanzines again, because I enjoyed writing fanzines and writing for other people's fanzines back in the 80s and the 90s, including Stone Circle. So it was fun to go back there again.
Yeah.
I am biased, but I think there's some really well written articles in there. bit of stuff by me, Rebecca, Gareth. Danny is a newcomer to the publication. In fact, Danny slaved away to design the layout, so thanks, Danny.
So did Kevin, our director of this podcast, and I went from contributor right through to editing the whole thing and
We couldn't have done it without you, Rebecca.
cracking the whip on everyone.
Project manager, yeah.
Yeah, it's a very glossy production. It's a long way from the kind of letraset and photocopying of the old days.
But yeah, this one's 100 pages full colour, so it's bound, and our last one with like 80 pages black and white photocopy. It's come a long way.
So in Stone Circle 10, we've got John interviewing fanzine editors, both past and present, about their experiences. We've got articles on Doctor Who, the Tomorrow People.
The X-Files.
More than one article on the X-Files.
2 articles.
Yes.
2.
One from an old fan, looking back at the show, and there's one from a new viewer called Danny Ray, discovering it for the first time.
Yeah, we got short articles on the Tripod's 40th
yes.
anniversary.
Plus a rant about studio tax write-offs, praise for the resurgence of Dungeons and Dragons, an American's love for British folklore.
Yeah, I went to the book launch promotional tour for Patrick Stewart for his autobiography.
And much, much more, which you can find on the website.
Yes,
Yeah.
hurry while stocks last. We'll
In
put
the comments.
all the links.
Yeah, we've got the links all there for you.
With links to buying it, so you can order it. £6 to order, £10 if you're international.
Funnily enough, one of my introductions to Quatermass was by reading a series of articles that Gareth wrote in a fanzine called Circus, which was a Doctor Who and all other things fanzine. Because you wrote an article on Quatermass Experiment, Quatermass 2, Quatermass and the Pit. They were really good articles. I think I started reading those just after I'd met you, so it's kind of a coincidence that I'd bought the fanzines you were in.
Yes, I enjoyed doing those, and actually went to the Manchester Central Library to kind of look up contemporary newspapers and the Radio Times and like. I thought I did a good job.
You did.
But since then, Andrew Pixley and Toby Hidoki and the like have done incredible deep dives on Quatermass and the Pit.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
So let's properly introduce the chosen sci-fi for this episode. It's the 1958 6-episode series Quatermass and the Pit. This was the third BBC serial by Nigel Kneale about the adventures of the titular rocket scientist Professor Bernard Quatermass. Quatermass and the Pit features André Morell taking on the role as he faces an ancient alien threat to humanity long buried beneath the streets in Knightsbridge. The last and most ambitious of the Quatermass BBC serials, The Pit features Kneale's trademark blending together of supernatural horror and science fiction elements to create a tense and disturbing atmosphere. The cast also features Polish actor Cec Linder as Quatermass's congenial friend, paleontologist Matthew Roney. Classic film actor Anthony Bushell as Quatermass's straight-laced military replacement Colonel Breen. Voice actress Christine Finn makes a rare appearance on camera playing the psychically sensitive archaeologist Barbara Judd. In 1958, British television drama and video recording technology was still in its infancy. Like in the previous Quatermass serials, this meant the bulk of the production had to be performed by the well-rehearsed cast in front of live studio cameras on each night of broadcast. A 35mm film camera pointed at a studio monitor was the only way at the time to preserve the serial for posterity. Quatermass and the Pit was a smash hit with 11 million viewers by the final episode. At the time, this meant a majority of all TVs in the UK were tuned in to watch. The legacy and influence of the Quatermass serials were far-reaching, especially with regards to Doctor Who, which over time heavily borrowed both format elements as well as many plot lines from its predecessor. The serials would be remade as movies by Hammer Film Productions in the 1950s and late 1960s, introducing them to an international audience. To this day, Quatermass and the Pit is frequently regarded as both the best of the Quatermass stories and also an outstanding example of 1950s science fiction.
So with the introductions done, we're going to dig down into the past 5 million years and listen to some moments from Danny and Rebecca watching Quatermass and the Pit. Let's hear how it went.
Okay, so Danny, we're going to watch Quatermass and the Pit. What do you know about Quatermass? Have you heard of it before?
I've just heard you say it a lot, and Kevin say it a lot, and Gareth say it a lot.
Definitely Gareth. He's mad on.
I think they're the only people, John maybe, but I think more John's in the context of the podcast.
Yes.
That's all I've heard.
Okay, Dan, so you've always been wanting us to get away from the 70s. Well, I've got good news. We're going to be going 2 decades away from the 70s.
Nice one.
To the 50s.
I'll still agree. Nice one.
I thought you'd be upset.
No.
Oh.
You are sorely mistaken.
Oh, so you've seen 50s films?
Yes, I've seen quite a few 50s films. I've seen like the old Miss Marples. I saw them recently. Oh, they were good.
Oh, okay.
You know, the black and white ones.
Yeah.
Can I also ask, you know when you asked me about Quatermass?
Yes.
Am I right or am I wrong? Has it got something to do with Nigel Kneale?
Yes.
Right, good.
He wrote it.
I thought it was a Nigel Kneale thing.
Yeah, Quatermass, all the Quatermass serials is Nigel Kneale.
Mm-hmm.
It's his thing.
Is it going to be in black and white?
Well, you've seen the title card right now, so what do you think?
I think my answer is yes.
Yes.
It doesn't bother me, I'm just wondering.
Oh, yeah, it's black and white.
Yeah, it don't bother me.
Anyway, shall we get started?
Yep.
The story gets underway and we're transported back to a building site in 1950s London. Already the workmen have provided Danny with a potential title for the episode.
The gaffer. What's going on here? What's the stoppage? He's found a skull. Careful. It's real old, isn't it? Looks it. Reckon we ought to report it. You know,
It's real old, innit?
Innit?
I'm writing that down.
It's real old, innit?
Also, I'm loving the fact that innit is a word in the 50s.
Yeah. Soon, more refined accents start to appear.
Colonel James Breen, a guided missile expert, takes over, ostensibly, as his deputy.
Very posh
When Rony
previously,
arrives
isn't
with
it?
his
Very.
people,
To be fair, anybody who hasn't been one of the like pit workers has had a posh accent.
Yeah, they have.
They've had the very British RP accent.
Whereas the pit workers just sound more normal.
Proper normal.
Yeah.
I really want to say down pit, but they're in London and they're not a beer. Also, it's not that kind of pit.
No.
But I really want to go down pit.
Danny starts to notice some of the rough edges to the studio scenes, so perhaps it's time to tell her how it was made. Yes, the thing about Quatermass was, it was filmed live.
Really?
Yeah, live. So that's why they can't do anything about, like, you know, when they were on the table and there was the weird mic stuff, you know, when they were shuffling papers. They couldn't just run in and change it because it's live.
Ah, didn't know it was live. It was quite good, that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's literally a rocket scientist.
Yes. Why is that funny?
Because it's not rocket science, is it?
No, it's not rocket science, is it?
He's now got involved in fucking archaeology.
Yeah. So this is the 3rd Quatermass series.
Oh.
Mm.
Why are you giving me the 3rd and not... What? I'm so confused.
Well, the first one, it was the 50s and it was filmed live, and you know what the BBC did?
Oh, so no one's ever seen it again.
Yeah, they taped over more than half the episodes.
Yeah.
I think there's only like 2 left.
Yeah.
End of the first episode, and Danny notices that not only the live parts contain fluffs.
So is it Quater?
Yeah, Quater.
Because that's...
Oh, yes! They've spelt it wrong. Oh, naughty. They've spelt it wrong.
They put Quatermass.
Quatermass. Yeah, it's Quater. Someone screwed up on that title card. Oh, what did you call it?
End card, but yeah.
End card.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, they spelled it wrong. As we enter episode 2, Danny shares her thoughts so far. Are you intrigued by the mystery?
A little bit, because obviously, like, the thing's obviously not going to be a bomb, is it? Or it's not going to be a bomb that we know of. It's going to be something, you know,
different.
But also, you've already had that woman who's already had like a funny do during the excavation-y stuff.
The funny do.
The funny do, I'm going to say it is. Funny do, she's had a funny do. Interesting, it's a woman again. Nigel Kneale likes to have his women have funny do's.
What is it? Psychically sensitive?
Yeah.
I guess.
She had a funny do.
She had a funny
See how funny do covers it better?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Quatermass and his new team interview an old couple on Hob Lane as part of the investigation, but Danny thinks they're being far too dismissive.
They don't remember anything.
Well, they were hardly reliable. Old man senile, old woman a bit round the bend.
He started telling him a ghost story. So she was right about you.
That is everyday sexism.
Yes.
She was not round the bend.
No, she was quite firm and
She knew what
clear.
she was talking about. She was very clear, and she got on with it.
She also didn't necessarily say she believed it was ghosts. She just said that's what people were saying, and we had loads of reporters come around.
Exactly.
And no one wants to live there because they think it's haunted.
Mm-hmm. And it's been left to get dilapidated.
You want a sounding, Sergeant? I'm not sure.
Danny identifies a possible inspiration for elements of Quatermass and the Pit's storyline.
The haunted house stuff
Mm.
sounds very much like the Battersea Poltergeist.
Yeah.
Don't know if you know about that.
Is that the one with the suburban house with the girl throwing herself across the room kind of thing, or is that?
That's Enfield Haunting.
Oh, that's Enfield. Right, sorry.
The Enfield Haunting was like in the 70s.
Yes.
So the Battersea Poltergeist, Danny Robbins does a podcast on,
Oh, it's on my listen list.
and that was in like the 20s, I want to believe, and it was in Battersea, and it's very similar to this. Similar. So I'm
Is
wondering.
it?
Yes, I'm wondering.
If this is based on it.
Yeah, if it's got some bits, which then made me also weird because there's a lot of things of Danny Robbins does where they talk about stone tape theory, and I just wonder if this is on the second Nigel Kneale thing I've watched, but does he love paranormal stuff?
Maybe it does.
Because there's two things that are very paranormal-y, and yeah,
You just seem to like to bring it in.
yeah.
Some admiration is shown for Bernard Quatermass's coat.
May I sit down? I suppose so.
I like his coat.
No.
Yeah.
You've got double breasted in one.
I-
Asymmetrical.
Asymmetrical coat.
I'll ask you about the house next
But then Danny shows great disapproval at how he treats it.
Well, I told you my rocket group's being taken over. Well, he's the official receiver.
Such men.
Correct.
Just throw my coat on. It's an absolute screwed up mess. We'll sort it out.
Just chuck
I'm
it.
just going to chuck it on this coat stand.
Yeah.
Fuck's sake. That's really irritating me.
Okay, I didn't even notice.
I mean, Quatermass is his fucking... Quater. See, now I'm calling Quater. Quatermass is his fucking inside out.
Yeah, well, yeah, now I can see it's also a bit chaotic. No, I was too busy looking at all the stuff around the room, like,
Yeah. But look at those coats.
screwed up.
Annoying.
Yeah. And of course, we have an obligatory, you wouldn't be able to do that nowadays comment.
It's ugly. Apparently they're convinced there's something sinister going on.
No health and safety back then.
Laboratory.
Oh, you mean the window can fully open? And
Yeah.
so you could just...
Yeah. I mean, I know that's meant to be like, that's a studio and you
Yeah,
can tell. But, yeah, you won't be able to do that now.
No, oh no, they put...
You can hardly open it like 2 inches.
Yeah, put blocks in and things. They are mechanisms to stop you opening them wide.
Exactly.
So after the end of Quatermass and the Pit, we asked Danny what she thought of it. So Dan, what did you make of that?
Shit.
What do you mean shit?
Shit.
The whole thing?
Yeah.
Why?
Just is.
It's considered a classic.
Doesn't mean it's good.
Pretty bloody good.
You all need to realise that it's not.
You didn't like anything of it?
The beginning was alright, like the first few episodes.
Yeah.
But then it just meandered off to shit. I just didn't like it.
Okay. Okay, so when we were watching Quatermass and the Pit together, Danny, you seemed to be really getting into the mystery. You seemed to be having a good time. But then something changed when we got to the end, because you shocked me with your reaction. What happened?
Well, it went shit, didn't it?
Was this episode 6?
Yeah.
What happened? Why did it suddenly go shit? Talk me through your thought processes of, because you were into it and then suddenly you seem to hate it.
Well, like, it was a mystery. I quite liked it. In episode 2, I wrote in my notes say that it reminded me of the Battersea Poltergeist.
Yeah.
Because it was the house that got like abandoned and things like that. So I was quite interested in that, and it really got me into it. And I was very much like, ooh, like this feels like stone tape. I was like, I'm totally into this. And then at the very end, it was just like, it was shit. I don't know how else to put it. It just kind of dwindled off into, what the fuck have I watched? Yeah, I've wrote that they, Quatermass says they've learned, but have they? What have they learned? They learned that aliens that were making them kill each other. That's all they bloody learned. There's nothing else they learn. What have I learned? That I got high blood pressure from watching this.
So you're not convinced that in Quatermass's faith that people will have learned
No!
and humanity will
Because
improve?
what have they learned? Nothing. Quatermass learned something. Did the rest of society learn anything? Did they? Fuck. I had high hopes. I really had high hopes for it being in Nigel Kneale, but it was a tripe.
So that ending ruined the whole
The
thing.
whole thing ended, yeah.
So episodes 1 to 5 don't.
Well, I'll be honest, it must have been in
negate
series 5, episode 5 where it fucked up for me because
Yes, you did
I
start
stopped
changing.
writing notes at 5.
Oh dear.
So 5 has no notes. 6 just has a
Wow.
tiny little line I wrote.
Did you write bollocks?
No. Maybe it was even like episode 4 where it started going for me. I was well interested. It was like these insects and giant spiders. What? But I got no answers. I got no answers for what they were. I want more. And it was crap.
Okay, thanks. And tune in next time.
Yeah.
Well, what did you like in the first few episodes?
I liked the mystery.
Yeah.
I liked the not knowing, but I felt like you were going to learn. And there was lots of like cues to say like, you know, it could be this or it could be that. Or it was interesting. It was like giving you a bit of history. And it had a bit of like...
Social commentary.
Yeah, I like stuff like that. And then when it started going aliens and they're evil, they make you want to kill, it was just like, oh, I was like, this old shit again. Which I know is new. I know because it was 58. It was new at the time.
Yes.
But for me, I've seen enough of that trope that it was just, it wasn't original or new to me.
No.
And therefore it was just shit.
Now, Gareth, can you give us a rebuttal?
I definitely disagree here. I love episode 6. One of the things I love about Quatermass and the Pit, the TV series, is the way it just builds up and you get all these clues upon clues and this unfolding mystery. And then for me, episode 6 is the real payoff of it. What do they learn? They have that kind of self-realization about violence that's inside us all, and it's something we have to combat and acknowledge and deal with, and I think that is timeless. I think it's also very clever in that last episode that Quatermass is affected. Quatermass is one of the people who is rioting and trying to kill people, which I think is a very bold thing to do, especially because it's André Morell, who's been so lovely and cuddly and likeable, which I think gives it more impact. And that it's the more abrasive Roney, who you might not have warmed to as much over this series. He's one of the enlightened ones who saves the day with this little bit of knowledge.
I think this might be why I don't like it, because in my second line of my first episode notes is, I like Rooney, Canadian archaeologist.
Yeah.
So I fell in love with his character straight away.
Yeah, I remember you still like him.
I've always liked him.
I liked him.
Yeah, so no, I disagree with you there again.
Weirdly, Danny, there's a Hammer film version of this.
I've been made aware.
Okay, so in that, Roney has less to do when he does in the TV version, and Quatermass is slightly more proactive, even though Nigel Kneale wrote the film version. I was slightly disappointed Roney doesn't have as much to do, so like you, I really like Roney in the TV.
Although, interestingly on the film, actually, the guy playing Roney, James Donaldson, he actually got higher billing than Andrew Keir, because he was the bigger name at the time. He'd just come off A Bridge Over the River Kwai.
Ah, yeah.
But going back to... I think it just builds and builds this series. It's actually surprising. It does work quite well watching it episodes quite close together. It still works if you just watch one a week, but it just builds up on that final episode with the chaos. I think, considering the facilities that they had, I think they do London ablaze surprisingly well, given their limited resources.
It did look good, I thought, that
It
bit.
was footage of the Blitz
Yeah, I thought it was real
that
footage.
the Imperial War Museum gave them.
Yeah,
But it
I have no
works well.
issues with like the actual visuals of the show. It was purely the story that annoyed me at the end.
You didn't like this idea of the gene legacy being passed down from the aliens to humans.
No, I didn't really care. I want that. I just felt like you said, it was building up, and 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 it was building up, but then it would just kind of fizzle to that, and it was just like, great. It didn't click with me. That's purely what it is. It just the answer didn't click with me.
Yeah.
I didn't get the answers I wanted to receive. Is probably more.
There's no suspense because, like you said, that build-up's gone, and maybe the answer wasn't what you were expecting.
I think for me, like I said, it just felt like it was, and I know it was from 1958, but I've seen it so many times in shows that it was like, okay, it's this again. Yeah, I appreciate it's been done first and all that kind of stuff, but it didn't stop me watching it from my perspective in my eyes and go, oh, it's the same old sci-fi crap.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, in your own mind, where did you think it was going? What were you hoping for in that, in the climax and in the final episode?
Do you know, I don't know. I don't know if it's I just didn't catch that, and I'm thinking retrospectively maybe it did kind of do this, but I was thinking more of they crash landed, but they settled, and then they were their own species for some time prior to maybe Neolithic times for us.
I really like the idea of it. There's a 5 million year old skull buried inside a spaceship.
Yeah, that was cool.
Because you think, oh well, so it can't be a World War II bomb. But you think, well, hang on, what's an ape man doing inside a spaceship?
But I think that's it. I think I wanted more. I think I just wanted more information.
Yeah.
That wasn't present, isn't going to be present.
Were you expecting it to be then that the aliens were going to eventually evolving into us? Is that what you thought?
Maybe, or at least integrating, because like obviously you've got different types of Neolithic people, haven't you?
Yes,
You know what I mean? We did integrate with Neanderthals. We did, have sex with the Neanderthals. We had relationships. There'd be more to do with that, and it was a bit more just that. I think it was these aliens make us bad. I don't. Well, I think that I just found it very like. Right, humans are shit. Yeah.
I don't imagine you'd have picked up on because you're not from the 50s, but it was... or any of us.
Far from the 50s.
But basically, that stuff about the Martians and their wild hunt and then what it was doing to humans, this was all an allegory for the Notting Hill race riots from earlier that year and other attacks from white mobs attacking black communities, because the 50s was a period of lots of mass immigration to the UK. It was transitioning. Yes, well, Windrush was the 40s, late 40s, but it was still carrying on into the 50s, and it was this period where we were transitioning still from the Empire to the Commonwealth. And we had these explosions of violence and resentments among communities because of all this immigration coming in. And Nigel Kneale wanted to reflect that in this story. And that's what all that stuff in the last 2 episodes was about.
He was advised about that speech by Quatermass at the end about, our warnings or whatever. But he's like, no, I'm going to keep it in. André Morell's rehearsed it. He's read it out loud. It's really good.
You mean he was told to take it out?
Yeah. The head of drama wanted to take it out, said it was too preachy.
Oh, that sounds like now.
No, I think it works in context, particularly because he's addressing a TV audience at that moment. If he were just saying that in a conversation, it would sound preachy. But this is something, obviously, he's worked on a speech.
Yeah.
And this is something that Quatermass does several times over its series. It's quite meta. It uses television. The very first story ends with a live broadcast from Westminster Abbey, which he did because at that point it was shortly after the coronation, so Westminster Abbey was very much in people's minds. And on this one we get the live TV broadcast in episode 5 and episode 6 that goes terribly wrong. And I quite like that sort of behind-the-scenes moments. I think that's Nigel Kneale having a bit of fun.
He's using television as television. That was his thing, because when he started at BBC, it was all radio people. It was radio with pictures, and they had to try. Him and his producer Rudolph Cartier had to change all that to make something that was visual and use the medium of television to make it feel real. And put real people in unreal situations, hence all the different types of classes, working class, teddy boys, teddy girls, workmen, whatever, and make them authentic to then highlight this unusual thing that was happening around them.
Yeah, I think the only contrivance that didn't work with me, as much as I love Quatermass bit, is that Romy has got this handy mind-reading technology. In fact,
randomly.
In fact, weirdly, it's in the TV series, surprisingly, it even more comes out of the blue, at least in the film version.
Yeah.
It's, that gun is placed on the mantelpiece fairly early on.
Yeah.
Although the aspect of recording it comes from Quatermass's rocket group, because he brings in one of his technicians So it connects it to Roney's existing device that records brainwaves, but the video part is from Quatermass. So that's slightly improved. I wrote down what it was called. What was it? It was
it's the mind encephalograph.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just feels a bit random. Like, by the way, we've also got this mind reading machine that can.
And we can record what you see.
Yeah, and we can see erase memories of aliens millions of years ago for some reason.
It's just convenient.
It's cool, but.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm curious, Danny, what did you think of the Wild Hunt
I did like that.
sequence?
Did you?
Oh, that expression, that face.
I can't remember it. What did the aliens going? You can't remember
Dream
it.
sequence, lots of aliens, Martians jumping about, killing
Beating
each other.
up. I love that.
I really can't remember it. I've watched from my memory. I've obviously didn't care for it.
But yeah, lots of weird
It's
sounds.
been a month since we watched it. My brain can't remember. I told you we've got to watch and record closer together for my brain.
I think it works quite well. Surprised again, it's one of those. It sounds slightly patronising to say for its time, but I think it's very well directed. I think the quick cuts between all the images, that recurring image of the legs kind of scuttling along. I think it's a very effective sequence. In fact, I think it's more effective than the one in the movie, which looks a lot more modelly.
I'll just nod because I've not seen the movie version.
No. I definitely prefer the TV version to the movie version.
Yeah, I rewatched the movie afterwards just to compare it. But I was just going to say, Danny, obvious question. Did you know that Quatermass and Pit was broadcast live?
Yes and no. Rebecca did tell me earlier doors that it was. But also, in the end of episode 1, it doesn't actually say Quatermass.
It says
It says Quatermass.
Oh, what? There's a typo on the
board.
On the board. And it's not really, you could call it a typo, but it's those white plastic things that they put in the blackboard, you know, that old
Say
style.
next time.
So next episode it says you know
Quatermass.
I did like those captions of like saying the next episode will be whatever day and time.
Yeah,
that was quite good.
And every episode, Dan was noticing things like that letter's out of position. It's not aligned with the others.
Yeah. So
like I enjoyed it though. I had fun looking for stuff like that.
So apart from stuff like the actual scenes in the pit pre-recorded on film because it was just too technical to do live, and then certain things like obviously the building site, that was location, but everything else was live. They rehearsed for a week before each episode.
Yeah, Quatermass in the Pit at the time was very popular. It had on average 9.6 million viewers, and the finale got 11 million.
Pubs would close for the last few episodes because people were staying at home to watch it.
I can appreciate how it's made. I can appreciate people loving it. It just didn't hit with me, and that's the thing I will say. You know what I mean?
I know, that's why we do this podcast to make you suffer.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. I mean, look. Last season, I was the quietest in a Nigel Kneale episode. Everyone thought I was going to come out saying it was absolute crap, and I really enjoyed it. I think I had high expectations for this, and that's on me. That's on me. Being told that, you know, he's, in my eyes, equivalent of like a Sally Wainwright kind of person. Like, I know that good stuff comes from
He was
her.
the Sally Wainwright of his day. He pioneered television drama.
That's the thing. So because I had that in my head, I was like, this is going to be some gold shit. And I was like, this is going to be great. And it was until the last 2 episodes. And that's what I keep saying. It's just those last 2 ones that just seemed the type of sci-fi that makes me go... and roll my eyes.
So Danny, I think what I want to do is show you another Quatermass.
No, you can fuck off.
Quatermass now. 2 or one of the films.
Or one of the films.
No.
Well, the first serial, they only recorded the first 2 episodes of 6, so that's incomplete. But
let's not bother with that.
They made a film version of it.
Yes.
In fact, in 2005, BBC 4 did a remount of a feature-length version, Quatermass Live, which was live, with someone called David Tennant in it.
Who's that?
Although it was Jason Fleming playing Quatermass. Tennant was one of the scientists who worked for Quatermass. But anyway, going back to the experiment, the first manned rocket goes to space. Something goes wrong. It comes back. There's a crew of 3, but only one man is there. It's a locked room mystery. So that might be a good one for you. But then you might hate the ending of that one as well.
Well, we'll find out.
Well, I want to
if
show
you're gonna
you
throw me
I want to show you the first two Hammer films anyway, because after Quatermass and the Pit, they're my favourites.
Quatermass 2, the film, is my favourite Quatermass.
It's a good film. I really
So
like
what's your favourite of the Quatermasses, Gareth?
It is actually this version of Quatermass and the Pit. Watching it again for this podcast, I'm just amazed at its atmosphere and its groundbreakingness in mixing science fiction and horror tropes. It was, it wasn't the very first that we'd had kind of the cosmic horror of people like H.P. Lovecraft, but this was like the first mainstream example. It's no wonder it was very influential on a lot of things that came after it. At the moment, I'm just watching The X-Files, and that has taken the whole alien inheritance in humans. It's even had buried spaceships in it. That definitely owes a big debt.
Nigel Kneale was invited to write for the X-Files, but for someone who wrote a lot of science fiction, he wasn't interested in mainstream science fiction. In fact, he turned down Doctor Who as well.
Yeah, he thought Doctor Who was rubbish.
He thought they were ripping him off, and it was cheap.
And to be honest, he was right. Doctor Who.
Return your DWAS card, Gareth.
It definitely owes a big debt.
A lot of stories does. Image of Fendal with an ancient skull, Spearhead from Space.
I would have said the Ambassadors of Death was the most Quatermassy style
I
episode.
suppose, and even the demons to some extent as well.
I guess like Quatermass 4. Quatermass was also influential on Stephen King and John Carpenter.
In fact, John Carpenter got him to write Halloween 3, Season of a Witch.
Yeah.
Well, going back to the early episodes, which it seemed you were enjoying, but the more sort of, as you say, the more Pulse Enfield, it's more like a ghost story in the early parts of it.
Yeah.
Did you have any theories yourself? Because you were coming in cold about what was going to be inside the capsule.
No, I had no theories other than it was going to be an alien race of some form. What that looked like, I have no idea. The insecty things that were in cobwebs is a bit weird because I want to know what created the cobwebs.
They weren't cobwebs, it was slime.
They're like membranes to control the
that
ship.
makes more sense, but I did write cobwebs, so that's why it's thrown me.
It's organic technology.
Yeah, you seem to enjoy the stuff where they were going to the neighbours and stuff and talking to local people.
Yeah, I loved all that because I love local history. I love local
going
folklore.
in the house and
I love that kind of stuff. That for me was great.
Because you picked up straight away that the street had two different spellings.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that stuff was also in the Stone Tape when they were speaking to that man who'd grown up and gone there as a dare with his friends as he was growing up. That was the same as talking to the policeman who'd grown up in that area and knew about the hauntings in the house.
Well, that's it. I mean, I love
it's
that kind of stuff. That's to me more interesting than who went to war with who. I want to know what the actual people did in the country when these things were happening. So I found that bit more interesting where, like you said, they were talking to people and having those kind of conversations, and you were learning like how it's like almost like how myths occur, how folk stories develop, because it's like you only need one little bit and then a bit of hysteria and it snowballs into something else. But I like that kind of I like that kind of thing.
Yeah, and then going to the church and finding the history of things like exorcisms.
Yeah,
and
1341 and
1700s.
Yeah, and all that and similar things happening.
Yeah.
So I think as well, because I'd watched Stone Tape, I think in my head I was thinking it was going to be more paranormally folk horror than it was going to be sci-fi. And I think that's why I was disappointed when in the end it was just aliens.
So weirdly, it might be Quatermass 4 is the one that might appeal to you more.
I think that's what it is. I think it was just more that I was looking forward to it being something a bit different, and then it wasn't for me. It was like, oh, it's that stuff I don't care for. I like the more niche, evidently, of sci-fi.
I do like the scene with the fortune teller and the cup. Throughout it, there's a nice vein of humour in Quatermass and the Pit, which isn't really there so much in the other two serials. But in this one, there's a lot of nice characterisation. It's subtle humour, but I mean, I love the bit early on when she's reading the tea leaves for her neighbour and said, I can see you're going to be going on a long journey. And her response is, well, I couldn't leave him, sort of like, which I thought was just nice. And
no prospect of taking him with her, like going on her own.
Yeah.
And I remember you were picking up on the everyday sexism with some of that stuff as well, because they just kept being dismissive of the woman.
Yeah, so like obviously I would say he was looking like he was full on PTSD, shell shock kind of thing, because he was very much withdrawn in himself. And you're talking 58, it's a very good time period for him to have been probably post-war and actually experienced war, just from how he was with things going on. And so he didn't want to talk about things, and I feel like that's because he's seen things, but she was quite happy to talk about things. But it was the fact that she was just seen as the silly woman.
Yeah,
she was the silly wife, the hysterical wife who doesn't know what she's talking about.
Yeah.
But it was nice to see, I can't remember which character it was, but there was a character, one of the men, and I can't remember if it was Quatermass or if it was Rooney or somebody else, I can't remember, but I've got a vague memory of like it being that one of them actually later on kind of was like, well, that woman said, like he actually seemed to listen to her even though everybody else dismissed her. And I thought that was a nice
Probably
little
Roney.
touch, that it was like it took value in what was said, because everyone else was just kind of like, oh, whatever, poo-pooing her a bit.
Well, they were saying, she was hysterical and emotional stuff, and we're like, no, she isn't. She's actually talking very assuredly and confidently. There's nothing hysterical in her addiction at all.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a line that Captain Potter says, and you think, oh, that's very prejudiced, because he sort of says, well, he's senile and she's halfway round the bend.
Yeah, she was very lucid, she was very articulate.
Yeah, she was very clear.
And she never said she thought it. She just said people said.
Yeah.
And that's why it's been empty for so long. If she were that bothered by it all, she wouldn't have lived in that house still. But she didn't care, because to her, it didn't affect her.
Yeah, she's simply saying this is what neighbours and people around here said.
Just sit in your living room and have a Martian ghost wander by from time to time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do like in those early episodes the kind of piecing together of this mystery and that looking through the old newspapers and the old church records, and when they're reading out the Latin, and it feels right. It feels kind of medieval. And even like little parts, like the archivist who's helping them there at the Westminster Abbey. He's a nice little part, that.
Yeah, I think
I agree.
Nigel Kneale's had a knack to create realistic characters.
In that very first episode, this is a nice bit of storytelling where you have that conversation between the two journalists, or rather the three journalists, and two of them are from the mainstream press, and there's this old gentleman who's from a scientific journal. And you get all this information about the background of all this, about paleontology and why Roney's theories are unusual and newsworthy, but it's done in a way, and there's this contrast between these two kind of jokey young men and this rather dry
Was
gentleman.
it called like Paleontology Monthly or something dry,
like
wasn't it?
It was actually, I think it was something like Paleontology Journal or something.
Yeah, the kind of thing that Have I Got News for You would use as a guest publication for the headlines, isn't it?
Yes.
One of the journalists, I don't know if I think it was one of the ones you're talking about, but definitely at the beginning in the first few episodes, one of the journalists was played by the guy who plays the Professor in Supergran.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, because I was watching thinking, wait a minute.
I think one of them was also Mark Eden, who was Marco Polo in Doctor Who.
James Fullerlove, who was a recurring character. He was in the first Quatermass experiment.
Different actor, though.
A different actor, though. And I just love, I think his introductory scene is great. I just love that when he comes breezing into the office and all that. The Bruins had an idea. James Fullerlove investigates. Sex in the coffee bars. And then the Knightsbridge 8 men.
He was a good character, sort of just wandering into the pit with Quatermass, following in his wake with his little spy camera and taking photos of the Martians and everything.
Brian Worth does an excellent job. It would have been interesting to see what it would have been like with the original actor, Paul Whitson-Jones, who's a much larger, more florid kind of actor. He's usually cast as villains.
I remember the Hammer horror guy more. Was it Sid James?
No, he was in the Quatermass 2 film.
Yeah, that's what I meant. That's what I said, the films.
Yeah, it wasn't James Fullerlove, though.
Oh, is he a different journalist?
Yeah.
Different journalist. And Roger Delgado played the journalist in the TV version of Quatermass 2. Playing a good guy for a change.
I like those ghost story touches. I mean, that whole investigating the ruined house. I think is a lovely. The music probably helps a lot with that sequence.
And of course, a special sound by the BBC Radiophonic Workshop. The sound, the frequency or the reverberations of the ship. So that sound was partly for us and them. So I guess it was diegetic, which means the characters can hear it as well. I thought that was very effective and built up the spooky atmosphere.
Yeah, I think it was really one of the first outings of the radiophonic workshop, really. It was one of probably their first, I was going to say their first hit single, really.
Okay, so let's talk about the cast. We'll start with Professor Bernard Quatermass.
I like André Morell's performance a lot. It's a lot warmer than the first two Quatermasses, who played it very, very serious, and there wasn't much humour in them. Whereas from the opening scene, you meet him, he's in a club, which is like, what, Quatermass is a member of a gentleman's club, and he's casually ordering sandwiches and being disappointed in sandwiches when they arrive.
I mean, they did look awful.
Yeah.
Well, he got to eat biscuits later on, though, didn't he?
In fact, interestingly, he was Nigel Kneale's original choice to play the part, but he wasn't available at the time of the Quatermass experiment.
And then he wasn't available again for Quatermass 2, was he?
But finally he was available for this.
He usually plays this kind of character. He's played a lot of authority figures in his career. This is probably one of his most famous roles, I would say, along with O'Brien in 1984 adaptation.
Of course,
I was going to say
yes.
Tiberius in the Caesars.
He's also an admiral in Doctor Who's Story of a Massacre.
And an aristocrat in Barry Lyndon, the Stanley Kubrick film.
Morell is really good as Quatermass, but my favourite character is Roney. And I always remember Cec Linder, who played him, but it's like, trying to remember what else he's done. I know he was Felix Leiter in the Bond film Goldfinger, but I don't think he was very memorable. And like most of the 60s Bonds, or even most of the Bonds, Leiter was always a different actor. There was only Al Hedison that played him twice, and that was by chance for the second film.
Yeah, it's a later.
Jeffrey Wright
I
is the
remember.
only consistent one in the Daniel Craig films.
I think it was David Hedison.
Well, it depended. Part of his career he was known as David, and then part of his career he was Al.
Oh, fair enough.
I've got his autograph, but I can't remember which version of the name he was using at the time.
So you've no memories of the Captain Potter, Danny?
Is he the guy from the military?
You had Colonel Breen, who was the one who was just angry and blustering all the time. And then you had Captain Potter, who was the nicer one, who'd say, all right, Barbara, you can go back in and get your stuff.
All right, yeah.
He was in charge of a Bond disposal team.
Yeah, and then Breen kind of was brought in.
Yeah. I do like Breen as a character. I think Anthony Bushell does a splendid job. I get the feeling with Breen is that he's a bit out of his depth as an officer. He's a bit too blunt somehow. I get the feeling he doesn't really fit in amongst other officers often. He's kind of worked his way up the ranks, but I think he's got a bit of insecurity. He's not quite at ease with himself, despite the fact that he's got this rank.
So that's why he makes the wrong decision later on, because he's trying to stamp his authority, like he's saying, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Everyone, we're doing this now. Even though it's totally the bad idea.
I think that's very realistic. I think there are plenty of bad managers.
Yeah, I think mainly because a lot of people get promoted into those roles because they do really well in the lower jobs, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a good manager or that you can manage other people. It just comes from, oh, you've been in here doing this job, the other job long enough.
And with Captain Potter, played by John Stratton, he's in another sort of variation on this story. He'd be kind of romantic interest, possibly.
Yeah.
And the lead, probably.
He's a bit of a young fogey to some extent. Is this about him? There's something quite old-fashioned about him. He seems older than his years somehow. And underneath him, we have a bit of a character who's well known to Hammer fans and general fans of British film. We have Michael Ripper as playing the sergeant, who's just one of those guys who turns up in everything.
Apart from Doctor Who. He was never in Doctor Who.
Yeah, he's usually playing a landlord.
Yeah, it'd be like the pub landlord in Hammer horror films, wasn't he?
He's tailor-made for playing a sergeant, plus with a sarcastic sense of humour. I do like that little bit where one of the soldiers is a bit cold, trying to flap his arms around. And
I remember him.
He comes up to him and goes, feeling cold? Pick up those sacks.
That'll warm you up.
That'll warm you up.
To be fair, that is something we kind of say at work if someone's cold. We always just kind of do you're not working hard enough then.
How can anyone be cold in your workplace? It's like tropical world in hospitals.
Oh, everyone's always cold. It creeps me out. Creeps me out, the people I work with who
find
are
hospitals
cold.
too hot.
I find hospitals too hot and I find everywhere else too cold. Because hospitals are too hot, they've acclimatised me wrong. Oh,
They
so
turned
much-
you into a reptile.
Yeah, they really have. I
Yeah.
don't like it. So, we're going to talk about any other characters, or can I ask my question?
Yeah, there's Barbara Judd, the female archaeologist.
She annoyed me.
Why did she annoy
I don't
you?
know. I don't know. I think it was just I think it was the kind of know-it-all attitude almost. She was too enthusiastic. I just kind of...
I remember you moaning about was it all the men just throwing their coats in a crumpled pile and not hanging them up for some reason?
Yeah. So there's like a coat stand and they just like threw them up.
It's
just
live television. They don't have time for retakes.
Yeah, it's like there was. Yeah, I imagine.
It takes 2 seconds to put a coat on a hook properly. 2
chuck
seconds.
it, just chuck it in a
Yeah.
pile.
She's kind of a classic girl Friday who's sort of just quietly competent.
At
The
least she-
actress who plays her goes on to voice a load of characters in Thunderbirds and other Jerry Anderson stuff. Christine Finn.
She didn't spend the whole thing screaming, though.
No, she didn't. She was competent.
She only
Oh, no,
really
yeah,
got.
she was very competent.
That's quite a difference for the
Yeah.
50s.
I think that makes it more effective because when she does kind of lose it in episode 4 and 5, it's more effective because we've seen her. She's quite collected and she's buttoned down.
I mean, having watched 2 things from Nigel Kneale, I feel like he very much knows how to write women, which is nice. It's nice to see well-rounded women characters. Don't have to like the women characters,
Yeah.
Oh, no.
because I don't like everybody in
Oh,
life.
no, you don't.
But they're all strong women characters.
Yeah, I mean, the woman who first finds the archaeology site is a woman.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're all really, like I said, they're all really strong. The other characters who are sexist are all the men. Whether he does that because that's just a normal thing, or if he's trying to write that in as a little bit to highlight, I don't know. I don't know how feministy and how equality-ness he is. But he always seems to write women in stronger positions than potentially other things would have been at the time.
Nigel Kneale's wife was an author. She wrote The Tiger Who Came to Tea, the children's book. Judith Kerr.
I didn't know that.
In fact, she worked with him on the first Quatermass serial because there was no BBC special effects department, so him and his wife had to make a monster for the end of the serial. We just got some rubber gardening gloves and stuck rubber and things all over them.
She died recently, didn't she?
I think she did.
Yes, she
Yeah.
did. They still exist, those gardening gloves with the bits of vegetation glued
Do
to
they?
them. I went to the Nigel Kneale centenary event a couple of years ago, and they were on display.
Doesn't one of the Martian models still exist, or is that a recreation?
Yeah, one of them still exists, but there's plenty of very good replicas.
Yeah.
I was just going back to talking about his skill at writing women and small characters. I just wanted to mention, going back to episode 6, and another thing I like about episode 6 is when we go to the pub, who've been watching events on the TV.
You got that couple.
And that couple, I think that's
Yeah.
a lovely little pen portrait
They get
of
real
this-
people.
Yeah.
You
that
quite like the
middle-aged couple.
accents in the different accents in this.
Yeah, I did enjoy that, like you say, that was mentioned earlier. I do enjoy that the fact that it wasn't just all, it's 1950s
Yeah.
BBC. It wasn't
Yeah.
all just RP.
No.
This is why I liked the bit at the beginning when it was someone who had a right common Cockney accent
Yeah.
going, it's real old, innit? And I know I'm doing it in a really Yorkshire accent, but the point is I really enjoyed
Yeah.
the fact that there was these different accents. It wasn't all just,
No.
we're not going to be talking like this for the entire show.
Exactly. You probably wouldn't remember, but Captain Potter, head of a bomb squad, John Stratton was from Lancashire, and you can tell he's got a northern accent in it, which you think, BBC, you think he'll be speaking RP, but no, he's using his normal accent, or maybe one toned down for TV. I don't know. It's an innovation, really.
Yeah, I did think that was a really good thing to see.
It's interesting with John Stratton. I only really know him for this and 2 other roles. I sort of know him for playing these grotesque middle-aged men who are like really creepy and horrible in Frankenstein and the Monster from Hell, and also in Doctor Who. playing an alien called Shockeye, and it's such a contrast to this,
I know.
well-mannered officer.
Yeah, I didn't realise it at first until I looked it up.
I'm going to ask all of you,
Okay.
how did everybody discover Quatermass?
Well, first of all, very young. When I was growing up, my parents, for the benefit of listeners, I'm holding a book at the moment. My parents had the free Penguin books that were published in the 50s with the scripts of the free Quatermass serials. And I remember, I would take these off the shelf, and back then I would just kind of look at the pictures, because all of them have got some stills in the middle, and I just kind of look at these. And the one on the last page of Hob floating, that scared me as a little
floating
boy.
Martian.
And weirdly, he doesn't actually. I mean, that's obviously, I think, a photo taken probably on the model set, because the Hob creature doesn't actually appear as clearly as that in the actual TV show. So that's how I knew about Quatermass, because of these books. And I knew that it must be a TV show because I could recognise what a script was, and I'm sure Mum and Dad told me, and how much it had frightened them when they'd watched them when they were teenagers. So Quatermass has always been there in the background for me, and in fact I think the first horror film I watched was Quatermass and the Pit.
So I first encountered Quatermass when I was about 10. BBC Two used to have a science fiction film that they seemed to show weekly, probably around 6 p.m. Anyway, so Quatermass 2, the Hammer film, was on, and that scared me, and I thought it was really interesting and exciting at the same time. And then probably in my teens I might have seen Quatermass and the Pit, the movie, late night on television, and then probably sometime in the mid-90s I bought the BBC video of Quatermass and the Pit. That was edited into 178 minutes, so they removed cliffhangers and all that. And funnily enough, at the end of episode 3, when we see the Martians inside the capsule, it comes up with a caption that says intermission, because you're 1.5 hours into the cassette. So it's like a 1 minute intermission. It doesn't say pause tape, it just says intermission. I thought that was charming. And then, just carry on with the rest of the tape. And then eventually the BBC released a DVD of all 3 serials, the surviving ones anyway. So it's kind of been around a while in my life. In fact, it's probably the oldest television programme most of us are likely to watch anyway. There's not much exists from then.
It's true. It's a bit like the same team produced 1984, and that's about the oldest complete drama that we have.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, isn't it? Because they want saving copies of shows from back then, so a lot of them are lost to time.
Well, yeah, especially that they didn't start recording them until later, the 60s. These were a film camera pointed at a TV screen. That's how they were recorded.
It was like at the time, Hancock's Sci-Fi, I think it did a parody of Quatermass and the Pit, and that's gone.
Yeah.
It only exists in audio form because a private collector got a recording of it.
Yeah. The Goon Show, another radio comedy, they parodied it probably a few weeks after, same as Hancock.
Mm-hmm. They used the same radiophonic sound effects in it.
And how about you, Rebecca?
Well, I discovered it a decade ago. So I saw the first 2 Hammer horror films first, with Brian Donlevy as Quatermass, and I just thought they were brilliant. I think Kevin recommended I watch them. I think they were on iPlayer at the time, and he said to watch them. And then after that, he borrowed the DVD set that Gareth got there. I don't know if he borrowed. I think he borrowed it from someone else. Though. We watched them. We watched the what was left of the first one. We watched the second one, and then we watched Quatermass and the Pit, which I just loved.
Is that your favourite of the?
Yeah,
3
and then
originals.
Then the Brian Donlevy films, which I rewatched recently.
Again, that's the thing, because Donlevy's my first Quatermass, a bit like your first Doctor. He's kind of the one I think of, because Quatermass 2 is the better of the 2 films he did. Do you have a favourite Quatermass? Because, we've had 6 actors play him. I've forgotten his name. Oh, that's right. Reginald
7.
Tate, Reginald Tate and Quatermass.
We've had 7.
John Robinson, André Morell, John Mills, Brian Donlevy, Andrew Keir, and
Jason Fleming.
of course, the forgotten Quatermass. Tom in Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels. Can't remember which one he was between him and what's the other guy's name?
He was just one of those Cockney geezers giving
Was he
it
Robert
love.
Carlyle? Was it one of his films?
No, the one that's an action star now. Forgotten his name. What did Crank and the Meg?
Jason Statham.
Yeah, Jason Statham. Sick.
Jason Statham. You forgot Jason Statham.
The pressure. It's the pressure.
I do not want to see Jason Statham as Professor Quatermass.
I just
Oh
like
my
seeing
God.
Jason Statham as anything.
He'd punch the Martians.
He
It'd
would.
be fine.
He would.
Yeah. There's a vein of satire in it, I think, about the military. Would you agree with that? Over the military and the government ministers? And
Militarising space.
I enjoyed that kind of bit. The government getting their dirty fingers in because that's what they do all the time.
Yeah, and Quatermass is like, I don't want to be part of this.
Yeah, I liked the fact that he was like, I'm a scientist. I don't really want the government involved in this.
Tough.
But tough, yeah.
Breen's running it with you.
Yeah, it's like, well, that's fine, but like, who do you think's funding it, mate?
Yeah.
So, I do like that aspect.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, back then, it would have seemed inconceivable that the government wouldn't be involved and the military for that. You know, the days of the private space program, I don't think would have occurred to people back then.
Well, not even just on that level. It was, you still got this with some Tories. Whenever there's any trouble now, they always say, oh, we'll bring the army in. Whereas back then, they did. But the army was very different back then. They did do stuff and got on with things. And you see it in Quatermass and the Pit, they're just doing things.
I suppose that happens in the world in general, doesn't it? So I just watched a documentary called The Rescue, which is about the Thai football team.
Trapped in the cave.
Yeah, trapped in the cave. So obviously the Thai Navy got involved. The Navy got involved straight away.
Divers, yes.
Yes, it's water. We're getting the Navy involved. But like these expert cave divers are all British. There were a couple from other countries as well,
Yes.
but there was a good number of them that were British. They kept saying, we need to do this and we need to do that, we need to do this. But the people in charge was the Thai Navy, and they were like, nope. Until you can promise me this, that, and the other. And like they wanted, like one of them said, I want to go in and look, and they were like, we're not letting you go in because it's too dangerous. They said, because we're not going to fish your body out. Because they expected them to die.
But they know the cave.
But they knew the cave. That's it. They knew about caves. And,
Yeah.
But it was interesting to see that kind of aspect of these essential experts in their field being like, nope, by the government, just because they were like, well, you're not government.
Yeah. We don't know anything, but we're not going to let you show us up.
Yeah.
Like Breen giving his own explanation because it's too irrational and embarrassing to say, oh, it's aliens.
Yeah.
Or that we are aliens. He just comes up with this
A plausible sounding.
yes, a plausible one that is implausible when you look into it.
There's a key line, I think the minister actually says, it appeals to my common sense.
Yeah. Of course, it was the Nazis.
Yeah. Yeah, €5 million skull. It's fake like Fairground Mermaids, you know.
And there's some nice, early on as well, I think there's some nice office politics going on with the Breen has been brought in as Quatermass's replacement, but nobody says it quite out loud, apart from Quatermass.
He's going to run it with you.
And I like all those sort of lines. When Breen takes up, I mean, assists you.
And in the 50s, I guess the military was much more familiar to people in that you would see them and stuff. Because, I mean, these people who were in the World War II, and then after that, you had people going into national service. So it was very familiar in how it worked.
That's it. It's less than 10 years since the end of World War II.
And of course, there were still unexploded bombs from the war.
Yeah.
So the bomb squads would have been quite a common sight.
Well, that's one of the things Nigel Kneale drew on when he was writing this, was the state of post-war Britain being rebuilding London after the Blitz. And they were common to dig up these pits around London and find unexploded bombs, or they'd find other things too, like Roman ruins and things.
Yeah, because it starts with them building new apartments, aren't they?
Yeah.
One thing I found it very interesting in our conversation is that you've not really brought up the age of the programme that much, or found it a barrier to watching this show, because this is still fairly early days of British drama, and Quatermass and the Pit is a real groundbreaker in its ambition, but it's still, by our standards, stagey.
Yeah, I know what you mean by you're right there with it's stagey. I don't mind. I don't know. I like older things, so I do quite enjoy like the older Miss Marples that are from the 60s. I enjoy St. Trinians from the 60s.
And 50s.
And 50s.
Are they the oldest things you've watched then?
I would say
the
so.
50s films and
50 films.
Quatermass.
I'm going to say, because I'm going to say one of my favourite films is Some Like It Hot, and that's from the 50s. So I don't know, I've already been pre-exposed to older programmes. I'm used to older programmes. I understand that they're a different format to how they are now and how the flow changes. The flow doesn't bother me, yeah.
So what do you think of the pace?
The pace was fine. Like I said, I wrote encouraging things from episodes 1 to 4. I wrote nothing in 5, so 5 obviously killed my spirit, and then 6 just annoyed me. I think it's more the actual writing of the story, not the pacing of the story, that annoyed me. I think if I got a different conclusion, the conclusion that I was wanting, I probably would have liked it more, and I wouldn't have complained. The pacing was right in my eyes, and I don't think younger people should be put off by it. I mean, if you look at TV in general, like TV's changed in the past 20 years.
Yeah.
So much in the past 20 years. And some of the stuff nowadays annoys me more than older stuff because they make it for people who have got surround sound systems. They make it for people who have got like a dark room with no light at all. As if I'm going to watch it like at 12 o'clock at night with no lighting.
Looking at you Walking Dead.
Looking at you Game of Thrones as well.
Yeah, it's like there's so many things where I'm just like, great, I'm looking at a black screen. I'm trying to guess what's going on, but I'm going to click.
You need
turn
to
a
watch
light
it on a cinema screen, don't you?
Please turn a light on. Like, at least in the 80s and 90s, they had lights on. Yes, because they couldn't do the really dark scenes. But I still understood there were darker scenes, for Christ's sake. Do you know what I mean? Like, I want to be able to see this.
I know that whole episode of Game of Thrones where it's just like so dark.
And it's
And
just
like
like,
the director goes, "Oh, you got to watch it on the biggest screen possible."
Well, that's stupid.
yeah, it's like, no, I'm watching it at home on my crappy little telly because that's what I have.
Yeah.
You can't dictate what your audience watches.
Yeah.
For me, the pinnacle was Walking Dead when Carl dies and they're in the sewer, and I think Rick and Michonne are sad. I don't know. It was just so dark.
That dark. I don't know if it's the same one, but when they're taking on the Whisperers in that cemetery, that was so dark as well.
I didn't get that far. I stopped when Carl died. It was just...
I stuck to the end.
I stopped sooner than that.
Well, I can only agree with you. I think it's exactly the right pace. I don't get bored watching an episode because you've got this gradual building up, and it's just interesting dialogue. I mean, I know you said you were losing patience a bit with it in episode 5, but I find that whole dialogue in the church, in the vestry between Quatermass and the vicar, I think that's beautifully written. I love it when Quatermass says, "Oh no, I agree with you. What we've encountered here is every bit as diabolic as any supernatural threat." I love that language.
No, I agree with you on that. I agree, like I said, the pacing's perfect. Even towards the end, like in the last episode when Rooney sacrificed himself, you know, I like those kind of bits. For me, my issues was the story, and it was how it veered off. That's on me, and I put my hands up and say that's on me. But that doesn't stop it being something I didn't enjoy towards the end. But the pace was fine. It was just the story annoyed me.
Gareth, instead of attending our Tripods rap party after finishing Tripods cast, you decided to turn traitor and attend Nigel Kneale Centenary. Could you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, certainly. It was a fascinating day. Funnily enough, it is podcast related. It grew out of another fine podcast called Bergcast. Berg being the acronym of the British Experimental Rocket Group, which is the fictional group that
Quatermass is in charge of.
Yes. It was 100 years since the birth of Nigel Kneale, so that was the hook. And throughout the day, we had showings of various Nigel Kneale productions, including the first episode of the Quatermass Experiment, and it ended with Quatermass in the Pit, the Hammer film version. In between, there were interviews. Notice that Jane Asher came along to introduce the Stone Tape, and we showed his supernatural. Well, is it supernatural or is it just real? Play Moraine, which is all about witchcraft, and several other shows. It was emceed by Toby Hidoki. And it was a very fascinating day. And as I said, Nigel Kneale's children were in attendance, and they'd brought along the creature, like I said, those gloves I mentioned earlier.
Was it from the original serial?
Yes, from that very first serial where he'd become this kind of animal vegetable mass inside Westminster Abbey. During episode 6, the camera, because it's a live broadcast, pans up and it sees this hideous
giant creature,
pulsing tentacled thing. And that is actually Nigel Kneale himself. He's sticking his hands through a photograph cut out of a Westminster Abbey guidebook.
For listeners' benefit, for the last few minutes of this whole conversation, Gareth's been doing a sort of like Zoidberg wiggly face under his, with his hand under his chin.
That's it. In fact, interestingly, also later on, it had taken over Westminster Abbey. They had all this vegetation brought onto the set. And Nigel Kneale himself and his wife, Judith Kerr, are actually underneath that, along with various BBC technicians to kind of animate it and lift it up and down and wave the branches about. So yes, it was an excellent day all round.
It was also weirdly coincidental that month that it was also Sam Yude's centenary of his birth.
Yeah, it was.
And for those of us who went to the Tripods wrap-up instead, we had an interesting day too.
Yeah. Yeah, so Dan, I do want to put you through the Quatermass experiment 1 and 2 Hammer films. But that's for another season, I think.
Season 20.
I am challenging you to watch it.
You can challenge me all you want.
We're doing it.
I'm not somebody who gives a shit about challenges, so...
It's for the
We
podcast.
either do
you
that
have
or we
to.
do an entire season where every episode is Star Wars.
Okay, then I'll do that, because fuck you, Star Wars.
So now it's time for the Quatermass conclusion. Danny, how many Dannys out of 5 did you give it?
How many do you... I want... Because I just know what Kevin thinks. And I know what Gareth said it as well. I want to know what John and Rebecca...
I said it'd probably about 1.
I think I'm being
1.5.
optimistic here. 2.5 for the first 3 episodes.
Gareth thought 3. Me and Kevin are thinking 1. 1.5.
Well, no, Kevin said 1.5 to 2, and I'm actually going to say Kevin's dead on. I was... At the beginning, I was 1.5. But you know me, I will change if other people... tell me about how they feel about things. I'm not narrow-minded in my viewpoint. So, I will give it a 2. I give it a 2 purely because I did enjoy the first half of the show. I appreciate that it was doing something new for the time. I appreciate that, everyone here likes it, and that I'm the odd one out.
You like the first 2/3 of it?
Yeah, I like the first 2. Yeah, you're right. First 2/3 of it. And I'll be honest, if it had gone the way I liked it, it probably got a 4. But it gets 2 points knocked off of it because it went the wrong way.
Yeah.
So 2 Dannys out of 5.
Yeah, 2 out of 5.
Right.
Yeah.
So on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this episode. Thank you to our guest, Gareth Preston.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
Gareth, what's coming up next on Very British Futures?
If it's not out already, it will be A for Andromeda and its sequel, The Andromeda Breakthrough.
And isn't one of our esteemed team going to be a guest on a forthcoming episode?
Yes, indeed. I'm glad to say Danny will be joining me and Cliff Chapman, and we're taking a little bit of a sidestep into talking about a film about a fictional science fiction series called Cruise of the Gods.
Sounds intriguing.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah. Okay. We hope you enjoyed this episode of I Don't Do Sci-Fi. Let us know what you thought. Our contact details will be at the end of the podcast. Please join us next time when we'll be heading to the transporter room to beam Danny aboard the Enterprise with the original Star Trek series. Joining us for this intrepid voyage of discovery will be returning guest Will Hadcroft. So until then, it's goodbye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to I Don't Do Sci-Fi. If you'd like to contact us or comment on the show, email us at idon'tdosci-fi@gmail.com, Twitter at I Don't Do Sci-Fi, on Instagram, I Don't Do Sci-Fi, or on Facebook, I Don't Do Sci-Fi. I Don't Do Sci-Fi was presented by John Isles, Danny Ray, and Rebecca Ray, and featuring our guest, Gareth Preston. The theme tune was composed by Steve Johnson, and the podcast was directed and produced by Kevin Hiley.
Well, we had found it a learning curve, didn't we, Dan, doing the layout?
Yeah, all I've got to say is I'll never use Publisher again.
Published
If you
in
ever made me do
2007, people. Oof.
I said if I had better warning next time if you ever made me do something like this again, I would steal Photoshop from Kevin and other programs I would get.
Yeah, Scribus maybe?
Anything other than Microsoft is all I've got to say.
Yeah.
And I'd just like to say that Danny, of course, would legitimately obtain a copy of Photoshop.
Yes.
Sure.